Deep beneath South Africa's grasslands lies a cave so treacherous that only the most skilled climbers dare enter. For millions of years, darkness has concealed a chamber filled with bones. Bones that belong to us, yet don't. In 2015, scientists discovered skeletal remains that shattered every assumption about human evolution's straightforward march toward progress. These weren't primitive apes. They weren't early humans stumbling toward civilization. They were something else entirely. A species that lived alongside our own ancestors but followed completely different evolutionary rules. Tiny bodies with huge implications. Ancient features mixed with modern capabilities. And most disturbing of all, evidence suggesting they may have understood death itself. This is the story of Homo Naledi, the Starman, a human relative whose very existence rewrites the rulebook on what it means to be human in our complex evolutionary history. The human family tree. We tend to think of humanity as a single unbroken line stretching from ancient apes to modern civilization. But the reality is far stranger, far more complex, and infinitely more fascinating than textbooks suggest. Humans aren't just one species, but part of an entire genus called Homo, spanning millions of years. Over a dozen distinct human species have walked this planet, each experimenting with different evolutionary strategies. Our story begins approximately 2.8 million years ago in East Africa's ancient landscapes and changing climates. A jawbone fossil, designated LD 350-1, represents the oldest known member of genus Homo ever discovered. This single fragmentary bone marks the beginning of our lineage, the first spark of humanity. From that point forward, evolution seemed to follow a predictable pattern toward increasing sophistication. Each new Homo species that emerged generally showed advancement over its predecessors in predictable, measurable ways. Brain sizes increased steadily. Tool technology became more sophisticated. Body proportions shifted toward modern human configurations. Primitive features gradually disappeared, replaced by characteristics we recognize in ourselves today through countless generations. Scientists called this the progressive evolution model, and it dominated thinking for over a century completely. Evolution, we believed, was a one-way street leading inevitably toward us, toward Homo sapiens. Each species represented another step up that ladder, another milestone on the inevitable march. Then in 2015, a discovery in South Africa's Rising Star cave system challenged this comfortable narrative. What researchers found there didn't fit the pattern at all, forcing a complete rethinking of assumptions. The treacherous descent. The Rising Star cave system lies roughly 30 miles northwest of Johannesburg in the cradle of humankind. This UNESCO World Heritage Site has produced more hominin fossils than anywhere else on Earth combined. But even in this fossil-rich landscape, Rising Star Cave stands apart as uniquely dangerous and difficult. The cave's entrance opens innocuously enough, a simple hole in the limestone ground, giving no warning. But venturing deeper requires squeezing through passages barely 8 inches wide, in some sections impossibly tight. Claustrophobia becomes overwhelming in the narrow chutes where walls press from all sides simultaneously. Sharp rocks tear at clothing and skin. Darkness swallows headlamp beams after just a few feet. For decades, experienced cavers avoided the deepest sections entirely, considering them too dangerous to explore. In 2013, cavers finally pushed through into a chamber that had remained sealed for millennia. What they found stopped them cold. Bones. Hundreds of bones scattered across the chamber floor in remarkable preservation. The cavers immediately contacted paleoanthropologist Lee Berger at the University of the Witwatersrand nearby. Berger assembled a team of slender, athletic scientists who could navigate the treacherous passages successfully. The excavation that followed became one of the most challenging in paleoanthropology's entire history worldwide. Team members squeezed through impossibly tight spaces carrying delicate excavation tools, and documentation equipment carefully. They worked in near-total darkness, mapping every bone's position with meticulous precision and extraordinary patience. Over multiple expeditions, they recovered over 1,550 skeletal elements representing at least 15 different individuals. The diversity of the remains proved immediately remarkable to everyone examining them carefully and systematically. Infants, juveniles, adults, elderly individuals, all ages were represented in the fossil assemblage discovered there. Both males and females lay together in the same chamber, frozen in time. The preservation quality was extraordinary, with delicate bones surviving intact over hundreds of thousands of years. But the biggest surprise came when scientists began analyzing what these bones actually revealed. A body built for contradiction. Homo naledi stood roughly 4 feet 9 inches tall on average, weighing under 90 pounds. These were tiny humans by any measure, smaller than most modern 12-year-old children today. Yet their skeletal anatomy told a story of remarkable complexity and evolutionary experimentation unlike anything seen. Every bone seemed to whisper a different evolutionary strategy, a different adaptation, a different approach. Their hands looked remarkably modern at first glance, with opposable thumbs and precision grip capabilities. The thumb's anatomy allowed for manipulation of objects with control matching our own modern hands. But their fingers curved dramatically, far more than ours, perfectly designed for grasping tree branches. This combination suggests they could both climb efficiently and use tools with considerable dexterity simultaneously. Their shoulders, rib cages, and pelvises told a different story entirely about their lifestyle and behavior. These features remain distinctly primitive, resembling earlier hominins like Australopithecus more than modern humans significantly. The rib cage flared outward, the shoulders angled upward, perfect for a life spent climbing. Scientists believe Homo naledi spent considerable time in trees, probably sleeping there for protection from predators. Yet their legs and hips were built for bipedal walking across long distances on open ground. They could walk, run, and travel just as effectively as modern humans across similar terrain. This dual lifestyle remains unprecedented in human evolution, challenging our understanding of how species adapt. Their skulls presented perhaps the most puzzling contradictions of all to researchers studying them carefully worldwide. Brain size measured only 465 to 560 cubic centimeters, roughly 1/3 of modern human capacity. That's closer to early Homo species from nearly 2 million years ago than contemporaries. Yet the brain structure showed surprisingly advanced features despite its diminutive size throughout development. The frontal lobe appeared well-developed, suggesting capacity for planning, social interaction, and possibly language skills. The temporal lobes showed expansion associated with memory and auditory processing in modern brains. The overall brain shape looked more human-like than ape-like despite the small absolute size. This suggests that Homo naledi may have been far more cognitively capable than size alone. Their teeth added another layer of mystery to an already complex evolutionary picture emerging steadily. Thick enamel and robust molars indicate a diet requiring heavy chewing of tough plant materials. The wear patterns suggest they ate underground storage organs like tubers and roots regularly. This diet would have required digging, processing, and possibly cooking to make nutritionally accessible and digestible. The Chamber of the Dead. But the most extraordinary mystery isn't what Homo naledi looked like. It's where they were found. The chamber containing these remains lies deep within Rising Star Cave's most inaccessible sections. Reaching it requires navigating a 40-foot vertical drop through a narrow chute called the Superman's Crawl. The passage is so tight that many people simply cannot fit through it physically at all. No animal remains were found alongside the Homo naledi bones in the chamber discovered there. No stone tools, no evidence of habitation or living activity whatsoever. The chamber contained only human remains from a single species, deposited over potentially extended time periods. This absence of other material is profoundly significant and deeply puzzling to researchers studying the site. Scientists have proposed several theories about how these bones accumulated in such an inaccessible location. Perhaps a sinkhole once provided easier access, later collapsing or filling in over millennia. Perhaps predators drag bodies there, though this doesn't explain the lack of predator bones. Perhaps flooding occasionally washed bodies into the chamber from elsewhere, though the chamber sits higher. But one theory stands above the rest, as most likely despite its revolutionary implications for science. Homo naledi may have deliberately placed their dead in this chamber as mortuary practice. This would represent intentional disposal of the deceased, requiring planning, coordination, and perhaps ritual significance. It suggests an awareness of death that we've never documented in a species this ancient. If true, this would make Homo naledi the oldest known hominin to practice deliberate burial. Previously, the earliest evidence came from Homo sapiens and Neanderthals roughly 100,000 years ago. Homo naledi would push that back by over 200,000 years to much earlier times. It would mean that tiny-brained hominins understood death finality and chose to honor it somehow. Evolutionary riddles. So where does Homo naledi fit in our family tree's complex branching structure exactly? Scientists have debated this question intensely since the discovery's announcement in 2015 first occurred. Four main theories have emerged, each supported by different anatomical evidence and evolutionary reasoning carefully. The first theory suggests Homo naledi branched off very early from the main Homo lineage. Their primitive features would then represent retention of ancestral characteristics rather than evolutionary regression. They would essentially be a side branch that persisted while other lineages evolved differently. This would explain their mosaic anatomy, combining old and new traits in unexpected combinations. The second theory proposes Homo naledi resulted from hybridization between early humans and late Australopithecines. Interbreeding between species happens more often than previously thought in human evolution's complex history. Their contradictory features might reflect genetic contributions from two very different parent populations mixing. This would make them a hybrid species, combining characteristics from distinct evolutionary lineages entirely. The third theory places them as a sister group to descendants of Homo heidelbergensis. This species lived across Africa and Europe between 700,000 and 200,000 years ago widely. Homo heidelbergensis gave rise to both Neanderthals and modern humans in different geographic regions. Homo naledi might represent a third branch from this common ancestor that remained isolated. The fourth theory links them closely to Homo erectus, one of the most successful species. Homo erectus spread from Africa across Asia, surviving for nearly 2 million years total. Homo naledi might be a late surviving population that evolved in isolation, developing unique characteristics. Their small size could result from island dwarfism or adaptation to specific environmental pressures. Survival in a harsh world. Life wasn't easy for these small humans struggling to survive in challenging African environments daily. South Africa, 300,000 years ago, featured dramatically seasonal climates with extreme variation throughout the year. Wet summers brought abundant plant growth and concentrated prey animals and predictable migration patterns. Dry winters meant scarce resources and fierce competition for every calorie available to sustain life. Homo naledi's small size would have made them vulnerable to numerous predators prowling the landscape. Lions, leopards, hyenas, and wild dogs all pose constant threats to individuals and groups. Their tree-climbing abilities probably saved their lives repeatedly, providing refuge when ground-based predators approached. Sleeping in trees would have been essential for survival through dangerous African nights filled with hunters. Their diet of underground storage organs required significant effort and knowledge to obtain successfully and safely. Tubers and roots must be located, excavated, and often processed before consumption for nutritional benefit. Some require cooking to break down toxins or make nutrients accessible for digestion properly. This suggests Homo naledi possessed considerable ecological knowledge about their environment's hidden resources and seasonal patterns. The fossil record indicates Homo naledi existed for approximately 100,000 years before disappearing from existence. That's relatively brief compared to other Homo species that persisted for far longer. Homo erectus survived nearly 2 million years across multiple continents and dramatic climate changes. Even Neanderthals lasted roughly 400,000 years despite harsh Ice Age conditions throughout their range. What caused Homo naledi's extinction remains unknown, but probably involved multiple environmental and competitive pressures. Climate change may have altered their preferred habitats or food sources beyond sustainable levels. Competition with other hominin species, including early Homo sapiens, may have pushed them toward extinction. Disease, genetic bottlenecks, or simple bad luck may have played roles in their disappearance. Homo naledi stands as one of evolution's most profound mysteries, challenging everything we thought we understood. These tiny, ancient-looking humans lived alongside our own species, yet followed completely different evolutionary paths. They climbed trees like distant ancestors, but walked like modern humans across open landscapes. They possessed brains smaller than any other Homo species, yet may have understood death itself. They remind us that human evolution wasn't a simple ladder climbing toward inevitable perfection and progress. It was a branching bush with dozens of experiments, most of which ultimately failed. Homo naledi may be gone, but their bones whisper a profound truth. Being human takes many forms, and we're only beginning to understand the incredible diversity that once walked this planet beside us.